The muffin tin hit the floor at exactly 6:47 in the morning, and Margot Ellison said something to it that she would not repeat in polite company. She picked it up, checked it for dents. It was fine, the floor was not, and went back to loading the breakfast cart. 12 rooms on the 3rd floor. 4 had requested early service. Room 304 had left a note the night before, handwritten on hotel stationery, asking if it would be possible to have oat milk instead of the standard 2%, and if not, could she please just leave the coffee black and not explain why there was no oat milk because, and this was the part Margot had read 3 times. Explaining makes it worse somehow. She had left oat milk. She did this because Margot Ellison was good at her job. Not in the way that got noticed, not in the way that earned plaques or shoutouts at quarterly meetings. She was good at it in the quiet, specific way of someone who pays attention. She remembered that 307 took no sugar. She knew that 312 liked the newspaper folded, not rolled. She had been working the breakfast shift at the Hearthstone Inn in Muskoka for 3 years, and she knew every regularity and every exception, and she kept them all sorted in her head the way other people kept grocery lists. What she did not know on that Tuesday morning in October was that the man who had checked into room 315 the night before was not who his ID said he was. Not exactly. His name was real. James Calloway Meredith, except that nobody who actually knew him called him James. His colleagues called him Meredith. The financial press called him J.C. Meredith, founder and CEO of Meredith Group, one of the largest private hospitality conglomerates in the country, which owned or operated, depending on how you counted, somewhere between 40 and 60 hotels across Canada and the northern United States. He had checked in as James Meredith, occupation, consultant. He had paid with a personal card, not a corporate one. He had carried his own bag. The woman at the front desk, a part-timer named Bev who worked Tuesday through Thursday, had not recognized him. Neither had the night manager. Meredith was not the type of face that appeared on magazine covers. He appeared in the financial section, in small black and white photos that made everyone look vaguely like they were testifying before a committee. So he was anonymous, that was the point. He did this, came to the properties unannounced, registered under his real but unremarkable name, stayed 2 or 3 nights, observed, 4 or 5 times a year. His assistant called it the audit. Meredith called it the only way to know if anything you were doing actually worked. The Hearthstone Inn was one of 7 Muskoka properties his group was considering absorbing into a regional portfolio. It had the numbers. Decent occupancy, reasonable reviews, one TripAdvisor comment that called the towels suspiciously fluffy, which Meredith had read twice and not known how to categorize. But numbers were one thing. He needed to know what the place felt like at 6:48 on a Tuesday morning. At 6:48 on that Tuesday morning, it felt like a cart being wheeled down a corridor with a very slight squeak on the left wheel. He heard it from inside room 315. He was already awake. He was always already awake. Sitting in the chair by the window with the lake barely visible through the early fog, reading something on his phone that he would not remember by noon. The squeaking stopped. There was a soft knock on the door of 316, the murmur of a voice, the gentle clink of a tray being set down. Then the cart moved again, stopped at his door. He did not order breakfast. He had not filled out the form. A knock anyway. Room 315? The voice was quiet, careful about the early hour. He got up and opened the door. The woman standing in the corridor was perhaps 30, maybe a little younger. It was hard to tell in the hallway light. Dark hair pulled back, Hearthstone uniform, dark green, a small enamel pin on the lapel that he couldn't read from this distance. She had a tray with a coffee carafe, a single mug, a small plate with 2 pieces of toast and a ramekin of something orange. Marmalade, it turned out. "You didn't order," she said, "but you had the light on at 5:30 and checkout isn't until noon, so." She left the sentence there. "I can take it back if you'd rather." Meredith looked at the tray, then at her. "How did you know the light was on?" "The blackout curtains in 315 don't quite meet in the middle," she said. "Little gap. The light shows in the corridor." He stepped back to let her set it on the table by the window. She did it quickly, efficiently, without fussing. "The toast," he said, "is that Sir Dow? We get it from a place in Huntsville. It's better than the white." He had been about to ask for sourdough specifically. She was already at the door. "The marmalade is from a woman in town who makes it herself. If you hate marmalade, I can get you something else, but I'd recommend trying it first." "I don't hate marmalade," he said. "Most people say they hate marmalade," she said. "Most of them are wrong." Then she was gone, and the cart squeaked its way to the end of the hall. Meredith stood at the window with the coffee, which was very good, and looked at the fog lifting off the lake, and thought that this was interesting. Her name, he found out later that morning, was Margot Ellison. He found this out by watching her move through the dining room during the communal breakfast hour, the way she managed 6 tables simultaneously without appearing to rush, the way she handled a toddler who had decided that his scrambled eggs were unacceptable by producing, from somewhere in her apron pocket, a small container of ketchup that she offered with such matter-of-fact authority that the toddler accepted it like a diplomatic treaty had been reached. He found out her name specifically because she passed the front desk while he was standing near it, pretending to look at the rack of local tourism pamphlets, and the woman behind the desk, not Bev, the morning shift now, said, "Margot, did 308 ask for a late checkout?" they asked. Margot said, not stopping, "I told them to call the desk because that's a front desk decision, not mine." She paused. "But if they call, they should probably get it. They're here for their anniversary, and the husband looks like he hasn't slept in days." Then she was gone again. He picked up a pamphlet about a canoe rental place and read it without absorbing any of it. The thing about Meredith, the thing that his assistant Claudette understood and most people he interviewed did not, was that he was not looking for perfection. He had been in enough hotels to know that perfection was a performance. You could train perfection. You could script it. A staff could be drilled into flawless response protocols and still produce a building full of guests who felt, underneath everything, vaguely processed. What he was looking for was judgment, the genuine, unscripted kind, the kind that knew the difference between the letter of a policy and its purpose. He watched Margot Ellison exercise judgment approximately 9 times that Tuesday, and he stopped counting because it began to seem rude to keep tallying. There was the matter of the woman in 301 who came down to breakfast with a look on her face that said she had been crying recently and did not wish to discuss it. Margot did not ask. She did not offer an empathetic head tilt. She brought the woman a pot of tea without being asked, said, "The scones today are particularly good," and left her alone with the lake view, and Meredith watched the woman's shoulders drop about 2 inches with relief. There was the group from 310, 311, and 312. Some kind of family reunion gathering, 4 adults and a rotating cast of children, who were collectively taking up too much of the dining room in a way that was starting to visibly irritate the couple in the corner. Margot did not ask the family to quiet down or move. She simply rearranged things, the coffee station, the juice, the bread basket, so that the family's natural gravitational pull shifted slightly toward the end of the room away from the couple, and everyone moved without being told to move, and nobody was insulted. He had paid a consulting firm $40,000 once to produce a report on dining room flow management. The report was 112 pages. He did not think it had ever produced a result as clean as what he had just watched Margot Ellison accomplish in under 4 minutes. He ordered another coffee and tried to look like a man on a business trip who was simply enjoying his breakfast. He ran into her on the dock. This was not planned. He had gone down to the lake after breakfast because the fog had burned off and the October light on the water was doing something specific, and he wanted to see it from close up. Margot Ellison was at the end of the dock, on her break apparently, or what passed for a break, which appeared to involve sitting on a dock post with a thermos and a notebook and having what could only be described as a conversation with herself. Not with herself, exactly. He realized when he got closer. There was a loon. Not an especially close loon. It was maybe 15 meters out on the water doing the very ordinary loon activity of existing on a lake in Muskoka. But Margot was looking at it very directly, and she was saying something in the low, even tone of someone reporting a situation to a senior colleague. Completely underestimated the square footage of the serving table, and now we have a structural scone crisis, so I'm flagging that for next week. The loon dove. "I know," said Margot. "It's a lot." She noticed him then. If she was embarrassed, she covered it in under a second. "The dock's open to guests," she said. "I'll move." "You don't have to move," he said. "Is the loon?" He stopped because there was no sentence he could finish that didn't sound strange. "Gerald," she said. "Sorry? His name is Gerald. I don't actually know if it's the same one every day. But it seems rude to keep starting from 0. Meredith sat down on the dock, which surprised him slightly because he hadn't decided to do it before he did it. "Do you debrief Gerald regularly?" "Only when things need processing," she said, with the tone of someone who is being slightly self-deprecating but not actually embarrassed. "He's a very good listener. He never offers solutions. Is that useful?" "Extremely," she said. "Half the time I don't need solutions. I just need someone to acknowledge that the scone situation is real." He looked at her. She was looking at the water where Gerald had been. "Is there a scone situation?" "There's always a scone situation," she said. "Today it's volume. We underestimated how many people would want the blueberry. It's a fine problem to have." But it means we'll run low by 9:30 and someone will be disappointed. And I hate when someone is disappointed about breakfast. Why breakfast specifically? She thought about it. Because people come down for breakfast hoping it will be a good start. If dinner is slightly off, that's okay. They've had a whole day, they have context. Breakfast is the first thing. If it goes wrong, it can color everything. She looked at him for the first time since he'd sat down. Sorry. You probably don't need the philosophy of breakfast from your server. I'm interested, he said and meant it. She studied him for a moment, the way she'd assessed room 315's curtains, measuring a gap. Then her break timer went off, an actual small alarm on her watch, and she stood up, clicked the thermos closed, tucked the notebook into her apron. The afternoon tea service is very good here, she said. If you're staying tonight, 3:30 in the front sitting room. They do these little sandwiches. She paused. I know that sounds like I'm pitching the hotel, I just think you'd like it. She went back up the dock. Meredith sat with the lake for another 10 minutes. Gerald resurfaced, finally, further out. He stayed another night. This was not in the plan. He had allotted 2 nights, but the second night was supposed to be an arrival day for the next property, a larger place in Collingwood that had been underperforming for 18 months and needed his attention considerably more urgently than a well-run inn on a Muskoka lake. He told Claudette he'd be a day late. She said, the Collingwood situation is, and he said, I know, and she said, okay, which meant she had opinions she was choosing to keep. He went to the afternoon tea service. The sandwiches were, in fact, extremely good. Thin bread, something with smoked salmon, cucumber cut at the right thickness. A woman named Elspeth, who appeared to be in her 80s and was working through her 3rd cup of tea, told him, without prompting, that the Hearthstone had the best cucumber sandwiches in Muskoka and possibly Ontario. And this was not hyperbole, she had done the research. Margot was not working the tea service. He noticed this, noted that he'd noticed it, and found the self-observation mildly annoying. She appeared at the door of the sitting room around 4 o'clock, apparently checking on something. She saw him. A small expression crossed her face. Not quite surprise, something else. She gave him a small nod and disappeared again. The situation became somewhat more complicated that evening at dinner. Not complicated in the way that required management or intervention. Complicated in the quiet way where something shifts and you are not sure whether to address it or simply let it be. Meredith was at a corner table in the dining room. Margot was working the floor. This, he had gathered over the past day and a half, was simply where she was. The floor, the corridor, the dock, wherever something needed attending to. She was the person the place ran through. She had not paid him any particular attention beyond attentiveness, which was not personal, which was just what she did for everyone. But at some point in the evening, he was on his 2nd glass of wine. There was a risotto that he had eaten most of. She came to refill his water and said, without preamble, "You've been watching us." He put the glass down. "Not in a strange way," she said, same even tone. "In a way that suggests professional interest. You take notes on your phone after things happen. You ordered the least notable thing on the menu at lunch specifically so the food wouldn't distract you." She paused. "The risotto tonight was a deviation. I think you were curious." "I was curious," he said. "About the hotel. About the hotel." She refilled the water. She seemed to be deciding something. "Can I ask what kind of professional—" he considered. He had a protocol for this, a vague answer about consulting that usually ended conversations. He found he did not want to use it. Not because it felt wrong, exactly because it felt lazy. "I'm in hospitality," he said. "I assess properties, whether they're running the way they should be, and are we?" "You are," he said, "exceptionally." She looked at him steadily. "That's good to hear, then. Is there a reason you didn't just introduce yourself as an assessor? People perform when they know they're being observed." "That's true," she said. "Although some people perform exactly the same whether they're being observed or not, because it's just what they do." She moved to the next table. He finished the risotto. He found out about her daughter by accident. After dinner, he had gone to the small library off the lobby, a narrow room with 2 armchairs and a shelf of paperbacks left by previous guests. And Margot was already there, on the phone, standing by the window. She had her back to the door. He was already 1 step into the room before he heard her voice. "I know, baby, I know." A pause. "Did you tell your teacher?" Another pause. Okay, that's the right thing to do." She was quiet for a moment. Her voice, which he had only heard in its professional register, calm, measured, slightly dry, was different now. Still calm. But the way a person is calm when they've chosen to be, not because the situation is fine. "I'll be home by 9, we'll talk about it then." "Yes, I love you too." She turned and saw him. He had not moved. There was a moment of recalibration on both sides. "Sorry," he said. I didn't mean to intrude. It's all right. She slipped the phone into her apron pocket. My daughter, she said it plainly without offering more. Is everything okay? She had a hard day at school. She looked out the window. She's 9. Hard days at 9 feel like the entire world. She paused. And they kind of are. That's what I've learned. You don't minimize it because it gets harder later. It's the same amount of hard, proportionally. He thought about that. How long have you been working here? He asked. 3 years, she said. I started when Nora was 6. After her dad and she didn't finish that sentence, but she didn't need to. It was a choice. The hours are strange, but the inn is good about school pickup and emergencies. I have a schedule I can mostly predict. She turned back toward the door. It works. He thought about the protocol he had, the one where he kept professional distance, where he collected information and held it separate. He thought about $40,000 consulting reports and dining room flow. I'm going to be honest with you, he said. She waited. I didn't fully introduce myself earlier, he told her. He told her what Meredith Group was, what the review was for, what the timeline looked like for a potential acquisition. He watched her face while he said it. It was the face of someone doing fast, invisible math, processing, not panicking, which he registered. The staff, she said when he finished, would be retained, he said. The properties we absorb, we keep the people who make them work. Wholesale staff replacement costs more than it saves. He paused. But that's not why. The reason to keep the people is that the people are the reason the place works. She was quiet for a moment. You said exceptional earlier. When I asked if we were running the way we should. Yes. You were watching all day, yes. And the breakfast assessment, she said. The scone situation. I didn't overhear that, he said. I watched you handle a volume issue at 9:15 without saying a word to the kitchen staff. You redistributed the remaining scones so they lasted until 9:50 and no one noticed there had been a problem. She looked at him for a long moment. It was blueberry, she said. People notice about blueberry, and yet, she agreed. Then, to his considerable surprise, she laughed. Not politely, a real laugh, brief, a little rueful. I have been talking to a loon about a scone crisis, and the man listening was a hospitality CEO. I wasn't listening to the scone part, he said. I arrived after the structural assessment. You heard the part about Gerald not offering solution. Gerald seemed wise. She shook her head, still faintly amused. This is a very strange Tuesday. It is, he said. They stood in the small library with the paperbacks and the window and the October dark outside. It was not uncomfortable. It was the particular comfort of a conversation that has arrived somewhere honest, without either party planning for it. The acquisition, she said eventually. What's the timeline? 6 months approximately. Due diligence, negotiation. If it moves forward, what determines whether it moves forward? Partly financials, he said. Partly this, what I find when I come in like this. He paused. I'll be filing a report. It will be, he considered the word. Positive. She nodded once, formally, like she was accepting a verdict she had been waiting on without knowing she was waiting. Then I hope Nora's school situation improves before you submit it, she said. I'd like to be functional enough to keep contributing. I have no concerns on that front, he said. She said good night. He stood in the library for a few more minutes, looking at a shelf of paperbacks no one had come to retrieve. In the morning, his last morning, the checkout he'd already extended once and would not extend again. There was a knock at 6:52. He opened the door. Margot was there with the cart, which still squeaked slightly on the left wheel. You know I leave today, he said. I know, she said. The good coffee is better than the road coffee. Statistically, she set the tray on the table. Sourdough, marmalade. Coffee from the carafe that was, in his honest assessment, the best hotel coffee he had been served in 3 years of doing this. Nora, he said. Is she? She's fine, Margot said. We talked. She's fine. He nodded. She was at the door again. She paused there, not quite turning. Gerald was on the dock this morning in case you want to debrief before you go. I don't have any structural crises to report, he said. No, she said. You're in good shape. A small pause. Drive safe, Mr. Meredith. She was gone before he could answer. He stood at the window with the coffee. The lake clear this morning. No fog at all. October cold and specific on the glass. He thought about the report he would write. He thought about what Claudette would say when she read it, which would be something like you've never used the word exceptional before, which was true. He thought about a 9-year-old named Nora having a proportionally hard day at school, and about a woman who had explained the philosophy of breakfast on a dock and meant every word of it. He drank the coffee. It was very good. He filed the report from the road, somewhere south of Gravenhurst, pulled over in a rest stop with bad cell reception and a view of a field. He wrote it quickly, which meant he wrote it honestly, which meant when Claudette read it 3 hours later she called him and said, You've never used the word exceptional before. I know, he said, or irreplaceable. I know. A pause. The Collingwood property is a disaster, by the way. I know, he said. I'm almost there. He drove south into a sky that had gone very blue and very wide, the kind of sky that happens in Ontario in October when the summer has finally decided to let go. He did not check his phone again until Collingwood. He was thinking about the marmalade, which had come from a woman in town, which was the kind of thing that was difficult to quantify in a report, but which was, he had decided, exactly the point. The Hearthstone acquisition moved forward. The staff were retained, all of them. The breakfast service retained its reputation for the blueberry scones, which the new regional manager, a man named Douglas who had been with Meredith Group for 11 years and was, Meredith had always thought, precisely the right kind of person for exactly this kind of place, said were the best thing on the menu and did not require any changes. He was not wrong. And somewhere on a Muskoka dock, at some point during a break that was technically 12 minutes but sometimes ran to 15, Margot Ellison sat with her thermos and told a loon the news, and the loon, who may or may not have been Gerald, dove without comment, which was, as she had always maintained, exactly the right response.